And I know it's really hard to talk to appraisers or to meet them. Every time I'm in a social gathering, it's like, oh my God, you're an appraiser? I never met an appraiser before. And so it's just kind of funny because we're kind of these elusive people that nobody feels like they can talk to. But I am not like that. And I want you to understand how our process works to make your process easier. One thing I want you to understand from this is even the appraisers that maybe are not so social, I'd say for the most part, we are not here to kill your deals. We have nothing in it for us to make a deal go, to fall apart or to be undervalued. As a matter of fact, that's actually a lot harder than if we just have the value and we can just sling the appraisal right through, type it up, and we're good to go. When I'm coming in low on something, I work way harder. So let's avoid that. Let's try and make it so that you don't have to worry about that. So this is something that I'm sure you all learn when you start real estate, what creates value and what doesn't. Um, Maybe sometimes it's a little different in the eyes of appraisers as it is in the eyes of, first of all, homeowners. We know it's a lot different for homeowners. Um, but understanding the factors that influence the home is so helpful for everybody so that when we get down to the appraisal, we're kind of looking at the same things you're looking at. So obviously, location, location, location. We've heard that a million times. It is so true. And when we say location, we're also talking about, is the house on a busy street? Is the house next to a water tower that's in the backyard? These things matter. So when we're saying location, we're not just talking about, oh, it's in, this specific neighborhood. There's also other things that add to that. Then, of course, kitchens and bathrooms, they really do matter. And it's kind of funny, as you guys know, a lot of times the flippers that come in, they know exactly what buyers are looking for. And so a lot of times you'll see they will do just all the surface stuff that looks good to the buyer. New granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, newer cabinets. They may just be cheap cabinets that they got, but everything that looks new and shiny are the things that they'll usually put the money into because they know that's what sells. And then, of course, gross living area. And I want you guys all to remember gross living area is all living area that is not separated. So from the main living area. So if you have a bonus room up above a garage, but you have to walk into the garage to get to the bonus room, that is not part of the living area. It's not counted that way, and you have to separate it. So I do see a lot of agents try to add it all together so that it makes it look bigger. As far as I know, MLS doesn't allow that, but I think I've seen it many a times. Same goes with an additional dwelling, which we call an ADU or a DADU, detached additional dwelling. Those cannot be added to the square footage of a home. They are very crucial in value, but they are separate. Um, then the important considerations that I had written here, ensuring any additions have proper permits. One thing I want to say about that is not all lenders care if there's been permits. And it's funny because I'm also a VA appraiser. I do FHA and I do conventional. And it's really funny how some types of loans and some lenders don't care about those things. And then the next lender does. So I just always kind of try to tell agents, maybe check into it, see if you know what you've got before you get to the appraisal process. Because if you didn't check all that, and then this particular lender is saying you can't add that garage that's been converted into living space because it was never permitted. And now all of a sudden the whole deal is falling apart and we're at the end of the transaction. Not a good thing to have happen to you. Um, that's kind of goes along with what I said here. Unpermitted work can negatively affect value or impact value. That kind of is the same thing. And you focusing improvements on the return of on investment type upgrades. Again, the kitchens, the bathrooms, all those kinds of stuff.
I was taking my makeup with me.
Did you grab your makeup? Anyways, let's go to the next screen.
But can you guys see?
So this
Am
is
I
about
sharing?
property type impact on valuation. Um, as we also know, different property types have different trends and considerations up in this area right now. For a long time, condos were just killing it. They were really doing well. And I don't know if a lot of you have noticed, but condos are not increasing in value much. So that's, been kind of a starter and then a stopper. With like manufactured homes, I always want to tell people about this. If you guys are selling a manufactured home, remember that there's a lot of requirements that we as appraisers have to do for underwriting and for the loans. If you have a manufactured home, I always try to get manufactured homes first. A lot of people don't know that you don't have to use only manufactured homes. We actually can use a stick built, but that's not the first things we go for. So say you have a really hard home on acreage, all these outbuildings, blah, 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 whatever, something very difficult. You as an appraiser have, you know, the freedom to make the best decisions when it comes to something like that. So what you would want to do is you have to add some manufactured homes. But if you have a house that's just a perfect comp and it's a stick-built Rambler, pretty basic, and it has so many of the other features that helped you, or that are similar to yours, then you can add it as an appraiser. We can add those. So just remember that, but you always will get hit on value or on condition and quality of construction when you're doing that. But, I just know that there's a lot of misnomers that people think, oh, appraisers can't go past a half a mile in the city to find comps. Appraisers can't go past 6 months. None of that is true. That is all false. We can go, I can have a house in downtown Seattle. Well, it wouldn't be a house. Let's say I have a condo in downtown Seattle, and, there is literally nothing similar. I can go as far as I need to go into another competing neighborhood if necessary. But always remember, these are only if there's nothing else. So sometimes when I have a reconsideration of value or we're having an issue with value, then the agents will come and send me stuff that's completely kind of almost off the wall or things that aren't comparable. But yet I have some great comparables right in the development. That's when you kind of call it searching for value. You're trying to go wherever it takes you to get that price that you're looking for. So we don't do that. But if you have a complex property, know that we are open, and all appraisers should be, and I'm not telling you that all are, but as a good appraiser, we should be open to looking at something. If you say, I know that our comp or our property is in, let's say in Buckley, but I've got a perfect comp that's in Enumclaw. And yes, I know it's in King County and all of these things. Show it to them. Explain why that could be a really good comp. And that may just be added because it may be a good comp. So you may just have to make those adjustments. We can go to the next slide. So these are a lot of things I like to help you with on when you have a listing. One thing is if you have just a slam dunk, again, I know a lot of you aren't in this area, but let's say you have a neighborhood that's just, there's 500 homes in the neighborhood. It's a slam dunk. You've got plenty of comps. I'm not talking about those kinds of properties in this next part. What I'm talking about is say you have a house that you know is kind of difficult, or say you had a hard time searching for comps and couldn't find them. Be prepared, you guys. Try to always avoid an appraisal being completed and then trying to send a reconsideration of value, because I will tell you straight up, appraisers do not like to change after the fact. So I would say try to nip it in the bud before you get to that end point. So how to do that? One of the greatest things you can do is if you have a difficult property, it's really all about the way you talk to an appraiser too, because I know I'm sure you guys have all experienced the appraiser that you say, here are some comparables, and they're like, yeah, you don't tell me what to do, or I don't need you to show me comparables. That's my job, blah, blah, blah. It's really about your delivery on it. So I always suggest as an agent telling them when they schedule the appointment or whatever, hey, this was kind of a difficult property to list, or there was really hard time finding comps, or you don't even have to say that. Just say, hey, I pulled the things that I used to list this property. What comps did I use to list this property? Maybe that could help you. So I put together a packet and it's in the house on the kitchen counter. Please feel free to take it if you want. And that's kind of a good way to avoid anything not being caught ahead of time. And honestly, appraisers do like that because you might save us some time. And we are not perfect. We could miss an unlisted sale. We could miss something that, was just 1 square feet over what we were looking and searching for. Because, a lot of times I'll bracket a size. Oh, the house is 2,000 square feet. I may look for comps between 1,500 and 2,500. Maybe it was 2,501 and I could still use it. So, you just supply those things to that appraiser. Um, I know a lot of appraisers, and you guys can do what you want because it's your business, but a lot of appraisers don't really like when the agent comes and meets them. And the main reason I don't like it is because I get a lot more flexibility by just using my MLS key box and not having to meet you at a certain time. So it's awesome when a house is vacant and I can just go in there and do my thing. But I do know that a lot of agents like to meet you at the house and stuff. And again, it's your business and how you feel comfortable doing it is fine. But just kind of supplying those items for this appraiser so that this value is not an issue. That's kind of the packet that I was talking about. We can go to the next slide if you'd like. I want to leave room for questions. So if you
I
guys
know, I was gonna say this might be a good spot for a few questions. If anybody
sure.
has any questions, if you want to type them in the chat, or if you want to just go ahead and unmute your line and ask your questions, I will check the chat though. And let's see. Oh, this is otters. Note takers. Okay, not really anything in the chat. So.
Sorry, I got a
Yes.
question. This is TJ.
Hey,
Yeah, hey,
TJ.
TJ.
I think you just went over what I was talking about, like communicating professionally when we're disputing value. What kind of success rate do we even have at that point? Try to get a reconsideration.
I have heard a very low success rate, and I will tell you a couple reasons why. First of all, stop it. As an appraiser, if you are coming in low in the first place, you've probably done a lot of homework. And sometimes I think agents or homeowners too don't understand what things we're looking for or what we have to do. There's some bracketing that we have to do a lot of times. So, one of the number one things I want to tell you, though, all of you, this is so important. Price per square foot is not something appraisers use. I'm not saying we never use it, but for the most part, it is not something we use. And unfortunately, a lot of you use it. And price per square foot, we break each line item out of different things. And I always say to agents, when you think about a price per square foot, to me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because let's say you have a waterfront property that's 600 square feet and you take the price per square foot, the price per square foot is going to be huge, right? But does it have anything to do with the square footage? It has nothing. So when you guys send us reconsiderations of values and you say, which I have one right now, oh, the value's here because the price per square foot for all these properties is totally in the range, but yet I don't have one sold comparable that has sold for as much or more than what this property's pending. I can't bring properties. Appraisers are not allowed to bring properties in over the highest sold comp. So if the highest thing you could find, and I have this exact thing going on in Graham, the house, and this is where I bet you guys have had this experience.
I just set a listing in, Graham. Yay.
Okay. So hope it's not yours. Uh, so here's the deal. In the development, this house is pending for $623,000. It's a VA appraisal. The last highest sale, and I spread out throughout all of Graham. I mean, I was really trying to spread out. It's only a 1,600 square foot house, so it doesn't have a lot of size. I could not find one thing that sold for more than $619,950, and it happens to be their neighbor. So it's right in the development. Awesome. I can bring it in at $619,950. But the agent is already going, I don't understand how you can't bring it in $3,000 over. And I'm like, I have to bracket the price point. I can't say every single thing is sold for less than yours, but yours is worth more because I just think it is. You can't do that. And it will almost always come back by the underwriter saying, please add a comparable that brackets the price of the sales the sales price of the subject. So hopefully I'm not getting off on a tangent. So the ROV thing, your chance of getting something to actually change is low because people have done their homework prior to that. So here in this case, I really stretched out. I really tried to find something because I'm like, oh my God, this is so stupid. It's not going to come in. It's going to be 3,000 under. There's got to be something. And I couldn't find anything. So we've done our homework usually, but that does not mean that 100% of the time you're not going to get the value to change, because I have personally changed the value, not a ton of times. I would say maybe 10 to 20 times ever have I changed the value. But that's because I usually shouldn't have to change it. I already did my homework. And usually when the comps come in, they're either not comparable, there's something that I'd already looked at that one and went, yeah, well, this one's not a true comparable. So that's usually why they don't change. But I would tell you, TJ, always try. It's always worth it.
Thank you. Thanks for the feedback.
Yep. Any
That
other
was great.
questions?
Yeah. I was just curious too, as we were talking about like kind properties, where you had mentioned because it's a manufactured home doesn't mean that you can't compare it to a stick built. But I've always been under the preface of style. So similar style. Lately I've been dealing with a lot of split level homes, and it's challenging sometimes to find enough for me to come up with an evaluation. Do you guys normally go, I mean, if you can't find another, you go further out in area, or would I stay with maybe a two-story or a tri-level? How would you guys do that?
Great question. And that's another thing. I think we come up on that on my slides, but that is such an important thing because once again, never try to stretch out to get your number. So if you
Mhm.
have 3 split entries right there, right in your neighborhood or right within a mile, I'm not going 5 miles out to find your value because there was one off that was out there that sold. So yes, you always want to try to get the most similar. Split entries are really a good example because they are really a quirky little
They are.
style. They're not a super loved style. But if I can't find a split entry, then I'll look for maybe a 2-story with basement. Maybe I'll try to find a rambler with basement, tri-level. One thing when you've got basements, you guys, you have to bracket that basement. We have to bracket that basement. We do not add all the square footage together. If it's 1,000 on the main floor and 1,000 in the basement, we separate 1,000 on the main floor and 1,000 in the basement. And we look for comps that bracket both side areas because the truth is basements are not as valuable and people don't use them as much. I'm not saying they never use them. And I'm not talking about waterfront where typically you're sloping down to a lake. So often you're going to find a lot of the houses are ramblers with basement, and a lot of times the quality of construction and the desirability is the same for those because it's about the lake. The buyer doesn't care that there's a basement on that because it's going out to the lake. You're getting the best views, all those kinds of things. But when you're talking about like a regular house in a development or a neighborhood, split entries you want to try to find a split entry. But if you can't always find that, you can do other things that also have some basement features. Ramblers, yeah, you really want to try to stick with a rambler because 1-story buyers are kind of typical buyers. And
Mhm.
as we're getting through the baby boomers now, that's what they want. They want a lot of that. So those are the kinds of things that you want to try. And when you're going and you're listing a split entry home, don't just use 2 stories or use one split entry and a couple 2 stories, and the 2 stories happen to support your value. And you just think, okay, we're good. Because that's not going to work. You're going to get that separated above and below grade square footage, no matter if you want it or not. The only times that sometimes I still have to separate, but sometimes I'll do price per square foot on the above grade and basement the same. Will be like either a super high-end home, we're talking custom that's been built to the nines, or waterfront, where typically the value for the lower grade walking out to the water is the same as the value above. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
We have a couple questions in the chat, and one of them comes up. I hear this often, that the perception out there is that VA appraisals are always less than a conventional appraisal. Do you comp them and do you do them the same, or are there differences?
I'm so glad somebody asked that because that is totally okay. That is totally not true, but I'll tell you what, a couple things about that. First of all, to be a VA appraiser, you almost have to wait till somebody kicks the bucket because I'm not kidding you. When you're in as a VA appraiser, you're in like Flynn and it's the best gig. So you're going to find most VA appraisers are really old. So I think a lot of older people get stuck in their ways. And I think they're very conservative. It's not that they're doing the appraisal differently because it's VA, except for one thing I'm going to address. It's more about them being stuck in their ways, kind of thing. So I think that's one thing. Here's the other thing about VA. 99% of the time, a VA loan has the buyer has no skin in the game, okay? They are not putting anything down. They're probably getting their closing costs paid, and that's all fine and good. But if we don't have like a good support of the value, then it's a dangerous thing if you don't have the value there, you're kind of looking at it like, and a lot of times the agents will say to me, well, they have no money if this comes in low. They can't pay the difference of $10,000. And it's like, and they really want this house and these are veterans and all that. I can't look at it that way. I have to look at it as doesn't matter. Yes, thank you for serving and all of that. But if the value's not there, I am not going to because when people have no skin in the game, a lot of times it's maybe easier to walk if things just don't work out for them or they're having financial troubles or whatever. And then guess who gets it back? The government. And then guess who gets the full look down about, was this really worth it? Not the agents. They're coming after me. And let me tell you, it's not worth it to go to court over something like that. So it's not really that they're appraised differently. They're a bit stricter. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what you need to look for when you're listing a house and you're saying it's FHA VA approved. What are the differences? Because for instance, how many of you guys know that you don't have to have earthquake straps on a water heater for VA? I bet none of you, but you do for FHA. And if you don't have them, they're going to be called out and I'm going to have to come back for a final. So that's a really weird thing. You think, well, why would FHA call that out? But VA doesn't. I don't know. VA is weird. There's a lot of weird things that they don't address. They tell us that anything that's a safety issue, you should call out. But then in the past, I've called out, for instance, visqueen, no visqueen under the house, vapor barrier. We all know the vapor barrier under there in the Northwest is really important. It's called safety, security, and soundness are the three things we're supposed to, if anything is a problem, call it out. I got in trouble one time for calling out no visqueen. They said, you're not a building inspector. You're just an appraiser. We don't care about building requirements. And I'm like, that makes no sense. If you care about safety, security, and soundness, how could you not care about that? So there's a lot of really kind of gray areas with the VA for appraisers as well. So if that answers your question.
Well, and we do have a few other questions in here.
Yep.
Thank you. That was good. That's
Yeah.
always a perception that's been out there. And maybe we can come back to them. Well,
yeah, we'll go ahead and take one more
Good.
and then we'll go ahead and I think, let's see here.
And I'm free to answer as many questions if you guys want to go.
Tatiana, do you want to unmute? Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question like this. For condos, for example, it's pretty hard to find sometimes comparables. And if I look back 5 years ago and there was a sale, pretty high sale, like 2 sales higher than I am listing at, could you use this for appraisal?
I would not go back 5 years. That's just too far. The market's changed extremely from 5 years.
Yeah.
When I talk about going back in time and say, you're right, I always want to find a sale in the condo development if I can. Sometimes I'll go back a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2, probably not 2. and then make a time adjustment. But I think more importantly, if you have a condo and you're having a hard time finding comps in that development, go to another similar competing development. If, you've got high dues and, lots of amenities and those kinds of things, and it's one that's 2 miles away, I'd rather use that than go back 5 years on a condo. Does that answer your question?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, thank you.
And
Mhm.
are you going to cover ADUs and DADUs as you go
Yeah,
on?
those are a big
Okay.
thing right now. Yep.
Okay. Okay, good. Then those were a couple of the other questions, and we've got one from Renee we'll come back to.
Okay, Renee,
Okay.
we'll do that in a minute. We can go to the next page. Excuse me. Oh, okay. We just talked about this. The government loans are often perceived as more difficult for appraisals. That people are not getting the same equal appraisal when they're doing like a VA appraisal or FHA. Really, the only difference is it's a lot stricter. So that's really the only difference. We're not going to give you a different value for a different loan program. It doesn't make any difference. And if it is being done, that's not right. As you see on the right, I talked about that. Um, okay, I think we covered all that in the question Linda gave.
I think so too.
So let's go to the next one. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit with TJ and I tried to bring this up. The utmost thing you guys want to do is avoid a ROV. That is, you don't want to get to that end point where all hell's breaking loose and you're at the end of the transaction and now it's coming low and you're trying to backpedal to do an ROV. If you have, I would always suggest that if you guys are selling a property, I know you guys do your comps right at the beginning. And again, please try not to just do sales price per square foot. That is not the only way that you should be figuring out the value of a property. There's a couple things. If you have a really hard property that's really hard to price, there, as an appraiser, I've done many appraisals for agents to get a property ready for listing. And for nothing else, when I do those two, I'm looking forward in time. I'm not just doing what the lenders require of going back in time. At this point now, I start putting more weight on those pendings and actives that are out in the market than I would in a loan transaction because they don't really like that. So if you really have a hard one, call an appraiser, have them do an appraisal for it. And then you'll also kind of know what the appraiser that's coming up, what kind of comps they're going to use. And then you can furnish that appraisal to that appraiser when it goes into contract and say, hey, we were really struggling with this one. So I actually hired an appraiser to appraise this. Here's the appraisal if that helps you at all. Great way to do it. But otherwise, if that's not something you want to do, or it's not something I would always bring it up to the homeowner. We've got a really complex property here. This is a farm, with 5 acres, and there are so many complexities. I've done a bunch out in Enumclaw where they're the forest land properties, 20 acres. You know, a lot of people don't even understand how those work. What can you develop on a 20-acre property that's a forest tax abatement property, or not abatement, tax reduced property where they're getting low price taxes for having a 20-acre property that they maintain for forest service. There's a lot of different things like that. So when you have a hard one like that, where you just feel like, man, I just don't feel comfortable, it's nice to get other eyes on it. Otherwise, I would say make sure you present that um, packet. Do some new checks if it's been, more than 90 days before, and it's sold. Maybe check again and see some current stuff, because sometimes maybe what it supported a year ago or whatever, and when you did your work, the support's no longer there. So maybe try to do that. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just the bottom line is it's better to deal with it before the appraisal's typed up than to do an ROV later. We can,
I got it. I have down to get the packet, go back to bringing the packet and just
yeah.
kindly leave it there for them. Don't necessarily need to interrupt time frame or anything, but
Mhm.
getting back to leaving the packet with
Yep.
comparables and any
Yep.
information. That would be
And a lot of
highly.
appraisers, I would say 90% of the appraisers, maybe less, will not call you if they're seeing a value issue, except for with VA, we have to what's called invoking tidewater. If we think we're coming in low, we have to let the lenders know and give 48 hours to the agents to supply us with something that they feel supports the value. And then we have to, address them all. And if they don't support the value, we have to explain why in the report. If they do, we can add them. Again, it's a way to kind of avoid getting to the end of the process. But on other loans, I always 99% of the time, I'll call the agent and say, hey, help
Good.
me help you figure out where this price is. Because I want you guys to understand, I'm not here to ruin your deal. But if it's not there, I'm not going to put my butt on the line and go to court over it or get in trouble because I pushed the value. I'm not going to do it. And even in this case with the $3,000 that I talked about in Graham, I'm not going to do it. If we don't have a comp to bracket it, I'm not going to do it. Then somebody has to come in with the difference. That's just how it is. So,
Joyce, when someone orders an appraisal directly through you,
yep.
what is the pricing and who typically pays for that?
So I've had
That's a
agents.
question in chat.
Okay. I've had agents do it different ways. I've had agents sit their sellers down and explain why this is so important and this is something we think you should do. And the sellers have paid for it.
Kind of
Um,
like a pre-inspection.
yeah. And then I've also had where the agents paid for it. And so it's really up to you guys. It's your deal. As far as price goes, it really depends on the house. If I've
Complexity.
got a 900 square foot, 3 bedroom, 1 bath, which you probably, not going to have need an appraisal for that. But if I had that, I probably would charge $700. And if I've got, a farm with da 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 da, all of this stuff, I may charge up to $1,200. It just depends, or waterfront or something like that. So it really, it's on a case by case basis. But if you guys ever have one where you're like, gosh, I need help, you know, how much would it be? You send me the address and I'll look at it for you. And then we'll go from there.
Perfect.
Um,
Thank you.
Oh, so in the shifting market part. So another thing I want to explain to you all, sometimes when I'm coming in low, I've heard, well, the market's screaming, it's doing great, and blah, blah, blah. Well, sometimes they're looking at like what's Pierce County doing, or what's, King County doing, or what's Bellevue doing. Well, there's micro markets too. So when I personally do an appraisal, I do what's a market analysis with a micro market. So let's say a development, like if all you locals might know Lakeland Hills, for instance, in Auburn. Lakeland Hills is like a really specific neighborhood. So I can do a micro market in there and see what that market's doing. Now, maybe Auburn's doing something else, but it just so happens that, like, for instance, in the crash in the early 2000s, Lakeland Hills was one of the first ones that just crashed because it was just that price point of buyer and that were struggling when the economy crashed. And so other areas weren't looking as bad, but Lakeland Hills was really going down. So I do micro markets and macro markets. So that's always a really good thing I suggest to do. And then, when I'm doing a search, if I'm doing condos in downtown Seattle, I don't care what's going on with anything else. I'm just going to, concentrate on downtown Seattle, just condos. So, try to stick with what you're actually selling. Um, so the last part here, the new lower density zoning that allows for multi-unit condo development within a single parcel. I want to talk about that a little bit. That's a lot to do with the DADUs and the ADUs. So a couple years ago, King County changed their zoning to allow for more density where people could have a house on their house. And then if there was access to the little dadu that they had behind their house, they could actually parcel the two properties out and sell them separately. So that was a very slow start. And then all of a sudden it started taking off. I happen to work for a lender, Cross Country Mortgage, and they are really, really, this one particular loan officer is very good at knowing how to do these. So I started learning early on what these all kind of entailed. And another thing that they do is they'll buy like a fourplex. Say they have a townhome fourplex, 4 units. They'll buy it as a fourplex and then they'll condoize it and they'll make each unit a condo and sell them separately. They make a ton of money doing it. It's kind of just starting to really get popular. So at the beginning of it all, it was like nobody knew about it. When they do that, they do what kind of they do like a condoized, say they do the main house, the DADU, and then there's a lot of times where they can build another unit on the property. And then all three of those become a condo development. And then they actually can sell the three separately. So that's a really popular thing that's coming to Pierce County. Now it's allowed in any cities over 10,000 people, I believe it is. So if it's a little teeny town, they're not going to be able to do that. But a lot of the areas are going to be doing that, and it's already kind of starting. So that was one thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, the DADUs and the ADUs. And then one thing about the DADUs and ADUs, when we appraise them, it's really, really important to try to find something also with a DADU or an ADU on it, because that is a really specific, that's like saying waterfront property and then going and using a house that's not on the waterfront. That's not even a comparable. So it's really important to try to get those. Sometimes you just cannot find what you're looking for, and you may have to go back in time, or you may have to go to a different area, or you may kind of get a cruddy one, but that's all you got. And then maybe you have to add another one that doesn't have a DADU and adjust for that value. But those are really popular right now. And I think one big reason too is because houses have gotten so expensive, people can't afford to pay the mortgage anymore. So to have a little additional dwelling to help offset your mortgage, my son just bought a house in California and I told him get one with an ADU in it. And so, that helps offset his mortgage. So that's really important. And any questions you guys have about the DADUs or ADUs, please ask me in just a minute because I want to answer those for you. We can go to the last one. I don't know if there's another one screen.
Right?
Oh, that's it.
That is it. That is
So,
it.
because I really do like to leave a lot of space for questions, because I really do feel like that's the biggest thing is people have these, weird things and they don't know how to deal with them and those kinds of things. So please, any questions you have, no question's a dumb question.
I think we only have one question in the chat that we didn't
Okay.
ask.
Yeah.
From Renee. It said, what about property like a large farm? I'm trying to figure out a price, but I cannot find any comparables. What would an appraiser do? How far out would you go for a specialty property like that? If I do find one, it's only half the acre or the house is much smaller. How do you adjust?
Okay. Great question. And those are really hard. Not always my favorite. But so what I start doing is you got to start taking the most important features. So start bracketing things. So acreage is really important, and you couldn't find anything that had all the other stuff. I think it said it's small house. So go ahead and look for a property in the area that's maybe not a small house. Try to get as small as you can, but try to find something with that acreage. Then maybe, and so a lot of times I'll put in comps that this comp was for something. I was bracketing the acreage, but it didn't have the other things. So then you adjust for those other things. Oh, this comp I was using because it has all the on-site buildings. It's an equestrian property. It's the small house. It maybe only be on 1 acre and this one's 6 acres, but I'll find what the price per acre is out there and I'll make the adjustment there, but I got that small house. So you have to start pulling the most important things out. And
Chunk it down.
huh?
Chunk it down.
Chunk
Right?
it down.
Yeah.
Just never get overwhelmed. Just go, there's always got to be a comp. So here's a 20-acre property. I got to find something with 20 acres. Okay, this is an equestrian property. It has so many on-site buildings. Well, here's one that's only on 5 acres, but it has all the equestrian stuff. Okay, so we'll do that one. okay, now I have to find a small old home that only has one bathroom. Let's say something like that. Oh my God, this thing's on 20 acres. It's only a 3 bedroom, 1 bath, from 1933. So now we have to find an old house, hopefully with one bathroom, and it may be on an acre and have one little barn, but it doesn't have all the other things. So then you gotta just have to adjust. And as we start putting them in and you start making the adjustments, then it starts kind of narrowing down to where you're like, okay, looks like the bedroom or bathroom count is a big deal. It's $10,000, $15,000 difference. Okay, then you make that adjustment. And that's how we kind of do is we just squeeze it down until you're left over with, wow, how valuable is, these other acres? Are they really that valuable? Because what really is the difference between 7 acres and 20 acres at that point? As we all know, price per acre goes way down. So that's kind of how you do it. And then like I said, on those really, really hard ones, sometimes you need help. So you might,
Steven has his hand raised, so Steven can maybe unmute.
Yeah, hey. So I have a real life example or a question here. I have a complicated home that just got appraised, and fortunately, the appraiser did want me to be there because it was a complicated home.
good.
And we weren't able to talk numbers, obviously, but the seller and buyer were under contract for 730,
Okay.
and everyone knows that the roof has to be replaced. And fortunately, it's appraised at 770, so $40,000 over, knowing that the roof has to be replaced. But that's if they're calling out for the roof inspection. So I have a
Okay.
feeling that's the value. This is where my question comes in because it's the first time I'm going through this process. So if at $40,000 over and it costs less than that to replace the roof, do you know what we typically are supposed to expect? Like, will the lender want more than one bid on that, or is that even something that you usually stay in touch with the lender to guide them through that, or what's something that I should know?
So, did you say the appraiser called out the roof, or you're just saying the 35R called out the roof?
The appraiser.
Okay, so the appraiser called out the roof. Okay. So yes, so if we call something out like that, it has to be fixed prior to closing. You know that. So, you guys will probably all sit down and powwow on who's paying, are we taking that out of, um, are we splitting the cost? How is it going to get fixed? Because it has to get fixed prior to closing. So you do have 40,000 over, but as far as the lender goes, I don't know how the lender does it. It's just funny.
So I can address
Linda.
it. So the lender just wants it done. So who gets it done? The only time you need bids for anything is if you're doing an escrow holdback. And if that was like if the work was being done after closing. And that's a whole nother approval process. But if the roof needs to get done, it just needs to be done before closing and the bill can be paid at closing, but we don't have any requirements over how many bids anybody has to get.
Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah.
in this case, thank you for that. So in this case, the buyer already did agree before we went into contract that they would raise the purchase price if needed.
Okay.
So thankfully the room is there to do that.
Yeah.
And so I guess technically it was a roof inspection that he called for, which I guess is that the same thing?
No, a roof inspection is just having a
Oh.
roofer come out and say whether or not I think, Linda, whether or not it has at least 5 years of life left.
Correct.
That's what the lenders want. So
Okay.
if it's just that, and I will tell you, roofers don't like to say that. So
Right.
So
that,
the appraiser called out for a roof inspection. So then you have to get a roofer out there that says there's 5 years remaining life and you don't have to replace the roof. If you can't find a roof, if that's not true and a roofer won't do that, then you need a new roof.
right. So then you got
Gotcha. Okay,
sounds
I
like
think we're gonna need a new roof then, because it definitely does. It everyone no yeah okay thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
those do come up a lot. And another thing I wanted to address real quick for agents, this is really important, and I highly doubt any of you agents have this issue because you guys are doing a class on appraising and you're not even getting class hours for it and all that. So you guys are just good agents. But one thing that just bothers me so bad is when I come to a house and I'm appraising a house, let's say it's FHA, and this happened with the fourplex. Total rush, it's an emergency. Can you get this back in 2 days? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm flying out to Florida. I'll do it the day before. I get there, the agent meets me there, and there are not carbon monoxide detectors in the units. And there's missing smoke alarms in 3 of the units. And I am just in shock, going, what the heck? You guys are in a rush. Why are you letting this happen? Because now this is going to put everything off. Now I have to come back out. I'm going to be gone. Also, the buyer ends up having to pay $150 for really your mistake because it's your job as an agent to make sure this stuff is done. That's why they hire you, is all these things. So don't let stupid little minor things like that, please, cause us to come back out. Hey, it's an easy $150 for me. No problem. But I just always feel really bad that homeowners, sellers, and a lot of times in VA, this will happen where something comes up and I'm thinking, now this person has to pay for it and they don't really probably have much money. So, Linda?
So Joyce, I have this is kind of a new happening. So oftentimes little things like that, an appraiser was always willing to take a picture. Not
Mhm.
always. Often an appraiser would say, snap me a picture, show me it's done, and we'll do it. However, with AI out there, as
Yep.
big as it is, I'm getting no to that question. That they have to physically go and inspect it, that they won't do pictures anymore because you can manipulate the photos so easy.
And not only that, do you know why they usually say no? I never, ever, ever say yes. This is my answer to somebody who says
Okay.
that. You check with the lender, and if the lender's okay with you taking the photo, I'm good. I don't care. I'm
Yeah,
not
and
doing
we've been getting yeses from the lender, which
Okay,
is
so I'm
interesting. Yeah. Okay.
99.9. I think only one time ever has the person
Okay.
come back and said, yeah, the lender said it was okay. Because almost always the lender says, no, we have to have the appraiser. And so here's the thing is if I look at your photos and I put the 1004D together, in the 1004D, it asks you if you physically inspected. I'm
Oh,
lying. I'm lying if I say I did.
fair enough.
So
Okay.
I'm not going to lie. So I
No, I
always
get it.
tell, and I've had lots of agents say to me, I've had appraisers in the past do that. And I go, well, I'll tell you what, call your lender. And if your lender says it's okay, then I'm okay with it. I don't care.
Yep.
But it never
Yep.
happens. I mean, maybe with your company, it's okay, but I've never had a company that was a lender that was okay with it. So just try really hard to avoid that stuff. And then sometimes I also get listings where I just got one last year, VA listed as VA, FHA, and conventional, and I drive up and the whole house is peeling off. Built in before 1978, and the paint's peeling everywhere. And I wanted to say to the agent, what made you think that this was going to be approved? And I don't know because I don't always know what you agents are thinking.
You didn't go over the differences between
Oh yeah,
FHA and conventional
yes. Okay, that's a good
on a
one.
listing.
So really quick on don't think that conventional you can get away with anything either because people say all the time when I call something out a safety issue, well, it's conventional. I mean, this isn't FHA and it's like I don't care if you have a balcony with no rails and French doors, that's not okay. It doesn't matter what loan it is. So
Safety.
it's safety. So if there are certain safety issues that are an issue, there's mold in your house or something like that, it does not matter what loan type it is. Now with FHA that is the strictest. On FHA and VA, pre-1978 peeling paint is not allowed. But I want you to know that if I have a conventional loan and there's peeling paint all over it, I will take pictures and I will say that this pre-1978 home, chipping paint everywhere, I don't call it out. The one bad thing is as an appraiser, if you call it out, it's like God. As soon as you call it out, it's done. It has to be fixed. So a lot of times I push it kind of on the lender and I just say, here's everything I see. And then I just check as is. And then a lot of times the underwriter will come back and say, we want you to change it to subject to, and we want those things fixed. So really, if you guys understand what an appraiser is, for the most part, we're two things. We are the eyes and ears of the lender. We're the one that goes out and sees everything. Lenders never see the inspection report. So that's just something for the buyers to do on their own, but they don't see what was in the inspection. So they use us a lot to catch things that are going to be an issue, a potential issue. So we're that, and then also we're the value people, but that they kind of use us for that. So FHA always have to have double strap on the water heater in Washington State. Not sure if anyone's from another state. I'm not sure about that. Carbon monoxide detectors and smoke alarms are required. Smoke alarms in old homes, they're not like the newer homes where every single room will have a smoke detector. But if you have one in the hallway, it at least has to be working. Um, and yes, I do check. I check them. And they can be dual. That's fine too. And then, like I said, safety issues. A deck that's up 3 feet, 4 feet, and there's no railing, probably going to get called out. And then as far as VA, again, it's really weird, but none of those really pre-1978 chipping paint is their biggest thing. And that was just changed. It used to be where even if the fence was chipping, the detached garage had chipping paint, we had to call it out. They just changed that. So just the house is the issue. So it doesn't have to be every building anymore. And that just changed like this month. So that's really the biggest thing, but then safety issues. And that is to the discretion of the appraiser. If you see something, not every appraiser can catch everything. And I always look at the electrical panel. And if it's a recalled electrical panel, like a Zensko or something, I will call it out. And I've had lots of agents say to me, I've never had an appraiser look at the electrical panel and call it out. And I'm like, well, did you guys have a home inspection? Yes. Did the home inspector say anything about it? Well, yeah. Okay. So it's a safety issue. It's just I'm more thorough and maybe I caught it, but maybe a lot of appraisers don't. So that is stuff. You gotta be prepared for that. And one other thing I wanted to tell you is actually a lot of agents don't know this, but the 35R is usually submitted after the purchase and sale, but we are supposed to review the entire purchase and sale, which does include the 35R. So at any time, if an appraiser asks for the 35R and there was things that were agreed upon, now if it's just signed off and they saw problems but nobody asked for anything to be repaired, then you don't have to see it. But if an appraiser requests the 35R, we do have the right to look at it. I know a lot of times agents and stuff try to keep it from us, but it is part of the purchase and sale, and we're supposed to review every page. Any other questions?
Let's see. Let me check the chat and make sure we got all questions. Let's see here. Great refresher. Thank you.
There was one up from Jennifer Smith at 1246.
Okay.
I think we kind of covered it, but
I struggle sometimes with figuring out the adjustment. Sorry, I struggle sometimes with figuring out the adjustment prices. Say the difference between acreage on the example that you gave, 7 versus 20, or price adjustment when a home has partially renovated kitchen against a fully renovated kitchen. Is there a recommend search we would go to get the current or semi value differences on
That is
specific?
a really good question, and I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't talk about that. One other thing I want you guys to understand, like sometimes when I walk into a house, the homeowner will say, I just got a new roof and I just got a new furnace and things like that. Not every single thing. We don't adjust on a number on every single thing. When I walk in the house, the first thing I do is I start looking and I rate the home in my brain. Is this like a off the charts new remodel? Everything's done? Is this just remodeled the kitchen, but the rest of the house is old and dated? Is this oh my gosh, a buyer for this is a fixer-upper. This is a flip, or somebody's going to buy it knowing that they're getting the whole house. Not every single thing is adjusted. It's more of a rating. So when I walk in and I say, okay, this is top of the line, everything's on point, then that's the comps I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for similar homes that are also been remodeled. The hard thing, tricky thing is when you start getting into these, what she just asked, oh, the kitchen's been remodeled. How do I value that? A lot of times I've trained nine appraisers who've all gone off and done their own thing. I always tell them, think, and I know this sounds really stupid, but think like a buyer. If you were to walk in the house and the whole house is really clean and the kitchen's been updated, but the rest of the house is just whatever, it's just, the same age as it was probably built. would you pay a ton more for that? You may pay more to some extent. And a lot of the adjustments when we do them, it's impossible to know like an exact number, just like you guys don't know an exact number when you list a house. You don't know. So sometimes it's more of a, let me do all the ones I kind of know, like I know what the price per square foot is right now in this area. As far as like the acreage thing, I would pull land sales. I would break down what the price per square foot is. Those are really hard because land is all so different, but you try to get as close as you can. And so then maybe you're looking at it, you're going, okay, this house over here was totally remodeled and it sold for $25,000 more than our house, which is clean and it has a new kitchen. But as I'm like a detective, and that must be the reason why. Because this house was only remodeled in the kitchen, but the rest of the house hasn't been. $25,000 difference, there's my answer. And that's how you do it. So you can't always get a perfect number. That's why I say sometimes with those hard ones, put those comps out or get that appraisal done and say, this is what this person was thinking and why. Like I always explain too, comp one was adjusted for this because of this, and this. Now there's a lot of appraisers that don't do that. It's all canned comments, but you're totally right. It's hard sometimes. It's really hard. And that's why this job is really hard. But it's honestly, I think the best job in the world. I love it.
Good. I think that's all the questions.
Okay.
And look at it, it's 1 o'clock on the nose.
Woohoo!
I think, did we get this? I'm sorry. There is one question about,
Yep.
do we pay for,
We asked that.
so oh, we did. Okay. If we ask for an appraisal before the house goes on the market, who pays? Yeah. And that would be
Yeah.
either yourself or your seller. Yes.
Another thing I just want to let y'all know, this is just something that's not even something I do. It's not like my top part of my job, but I do have a lot of agents that sometimes they know county records is wrong on square footage, but they don't want to put in the listing. Oh, and I've seen this as per borrower, or borrower measure or something like that. I don't even think you're allowed to do that. But if you guys ever need like a difficult house or a house that you're like, I just know it's not that square footage, call me. My number's down here because I go out and I measure a house. Usually it's $150, and then you can put it in the listing as per appraisal. And so now you've got that actual true measurement. And that can be helpful too, because sometimes you just know it's wrong, but you can't put that in there unless you're right.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
So yeah, so I hope you guys learned a couple things, and it was really nice talking to y'all. And if you ever need some help, I'm here. I'm here in Pierce County. I live in Browns Point, but I do cover King, Pierce, Thurston. Thurston's my VA county, so I'm there every week. I will go to Kitsap if I have to. It depends on, who's asking. But I pretty much cover all those areas. And I do estate, divorce. I do a ton of estate and divorce. Actually, I've been kind of pushing away a little bit from lending just because the estate and divorce business, everyone's dying and everyone's divorcing, it seems like. So I'm pretty busy with that. So if you ever need any, I know you guys get calls sometimes, I want to put the house on the market with you, but my mom just died and I need to get an appraisal. Do you know anyone? Please feel free to call me.
Wonderful.
That's great.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And we will make sure that everybody has this information, your information and contact. This was wonderful. I'm telling you, I learned something new every single time. Every single time.
Every day we
Yes,
learn something new if we
yes.
try. Another
Things are
thing I want to say, honestly, and I mean this, if you guys have a question, something that you're struggling with, and you think, oh my God, I don't want to ask her, I don't want to bug her, call me. I answer the phone even when I'm in the shower. It's pretty crazy. But I will always answer the phone. And if it's a question you guys are just struggling with, just call me. I don't mind at all answering questions. If I can't answer it, I won't. But if you're asking me, do you guys adjust on this? Or under the house, I found, dead rat. Is that going to be a problem? Things like that. Just call me. Put me in your phone. I'll answer the questions. Okay?
Yeah.
That's great.
All right,
Yes.
y'all have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, we appreciate. Thank you, Joyce. Have a great
Okay.
weekend, Linda. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You
Yep.
bet.
And everybody, have a good weekend.
All right.